So, we had a story, we had an idea for a solution, or at least something that would make things better, but we needed a platform. Without the Observer newspaper, this campaign would be literally nowhere, or at least it would be in a kitchen still. We'd still be two middle-aged women tearful in a kitchen. The Observer has been extraordinary in its readiness to publish our words, to back up our campaign, dedicate a page to the campaign on its website, give us a voice, which is what we needed. We had to have a voice, and that's been the Observer. A few weeks ago, I dreamt that its deputy editor, Paul Webster, came here with his hair grown very long and in a ponytail and carrying a guitar, but he is here, but he has no ponytail and he has no guitar.
Nikki, I do most things to make your dreams come true, but I'm not going to sing. I'm sure you'll be relieved to hear that. I'm very delighted and honoured to be here at this conference and to mark 2 years of what I think is one of the most remarkable campaigns that the Observer has ever been involved with. We're on the brink now, I think, of reaching 400 entries to the list that we host, the website hosts of participants. It has been an extraordinary journey for us, as well as for the people who created it in the first place, and it's one that we're still on, we're still committed to, and we're sure that it will continue to grow in strength. I've been deputy editor of the Observer for 20 years, and I have no doubt at all that John's campaign is the one that I feel most proud to have been associated with, and the one that I think has had the most impact on the lives of the people whose interests it was formed to represent. I recognise, of course, that the campaign has gathered its strength, its force from a wide range of sources, and that the Observer has played a relatively small but nonetheless important part in its work. First amongst these sources, of course, are the two remarkable women at its heart, who've combined organisational flair with imagination, determination, compassion, and talent to create the most formidable fighting force in a way that I think is quite remarkable to observe from so close. Then there are, of course, the thousands of carers, of nurses and doctors and administrators up and down the country who've tried, often in highly innovative ways, to address the problems that John's campaign has so vividly highlighted, and who've been trying to improve the lives of people with dementia and their families, and who've responded obviously for years and years, and who've been struggling to find a way for their voice to be heard, and who've responded so warmly to the chance that the Observer and the campaign has provided for them to share their experiences. The Observer has got a very fine tradition of campaigning journalism, which we're all collectively very proud of and is part of our sort of DNA. It was the Observer that was instrumental in the creation of Amnesty International back in the very early 1960s, when it carried a very remarkable piece by a man called Peter Benenson, which was highlighting the plight of political prisoners held in Portugal under the dictatorship there. And out of that article came Amnesty International. An idea was born that still is an incredibly important part of British and wider society, and something that we can be justifiably proud of. It was the Observer too that campaigned 50 years ago for the parents and carers to be given the right to visit their children in hospital, on hospital wards whenever they wished. So we are completing, in a way, a remarkable circle with John's campaign. It could well be that people with dementia who are now being denied the support of their families just when they need it most are the very same people who backed the paper's campaign all those years ago. I have to say as well, in passing, that not all our campaigns have been as successful. We have had some, I suppose you could call them turkeys, really. So it was relatively recently, under the previous editor, that we launched via an extremely illustrious piece by Harold Evans, the sort of legendary journalist, a campaign to change the name of Heathrow Airport. We thought it should be called Winston Churchill Airport, and then other people thought it should be Lady Diana Airport or even Blairport. And you'll have observed that we're still working on that campaign. But despite the odd failure, newspapers generally have maintained the power to be formidable campaigning machines. In the case of The Observer, I think this is because it retains as its core purpose, the ambition to give voice to the voiceless and to target unresponsive and uncaring authorities. To do this, it's able to draw one of the great capacities that newspapers have is that they're able to draw on a fairly formidable institutional capacity with expertise and resources that are needed to launch and maintain campaigns in the modern media age. I was just talking before we started to a colleague from the Alzheimer's Society who was contrasting what I felt was a really flattering comparison. He was contrasting the campaign that we've mounted through John's campaign with recent sort of very powerful but campaigns around Brexit, for instance, which are, which I don't personally agree with the way that the outcome that they achieve, but they do show you just what significant power newspapers can still muster. And I like to feel that as I say, that John's campaign is in accord with what I feel to be the sort of core ambitions of the paper that stretch back for decades. So a range of our staff have been engaged, have brought their skills to bear on John's campaign. Writers, sub-editors, graphic designers, lawyers, editors. It's a sort of complex process, even though it may look fairly simple in its outcome, but the actual process of putting together the website and the paper in the way that we do does involve a range of different people, and also for a campaign to work, it has to be sustained over a long period of time. It's pointless wading in and making a loud declaration and then standing back and expecting things to happen. You have to be prepared for the long haul. You have to be prepared to broaden your appeal as much as you possibly can, to reach out to a wider group of people. You have to be prepared to keep repeating your message, to find new ways of expressing it. And so media organisations and newspapers such as the Observer and the Guardian, of which we're part of the group, have that capacity. They have those people. They employ them in all sorts of different capacities. So it's why it makes us a suitable vehicle, and one that was, I think, quite useful, as Nikki and Julia have both very kindly pointed out, in the sort of development of the campaign. You have to be fluent in the use of video. Julia's video of her mother and the letter is hosted on the website. As remarkable, well, as you've all now seen, is a remarkable piece of film, I think. You have to, I'm slightly out of my depth in this respect, but we have people, thankfully, who are very fluent in the use of Twitter and Facebook and all the other social media platforms that you now have to be able to master to be effective as a campaign. And I also think that newspapers in particular, within the media, the printed form, the thing that you can pick up and look at in your hand, are the best means to harness the power of the written word and to use them to move the hearts and minds of even the kind of flintiest bureaucrat and politician. And so that's when I was passed an email from Nikki that she'd written to my colleagues on the review section of the paper. I knew that it was something that the Observer was sort of almost there to do. She starts her email, I'm going to read it to you now. She starts her email in characteristically modest style. She says, "I hope you don't mind me writing. It must be a busy time for you. There is a piece I need to write somewhere, and I wondered if you'd be interested, but of course I understand if you're not. My very lovely and beloved father died 2 weeks ago after a very long and distressing time suffering from dementia. He had been in gradual decline for more than a decade, but went into hospital in February, and wild air seemed to go off a cliff. His deterioration was catastrophic, and when he came out a few weeks later, he was emaciated to the point of starvation, incontinent, immobile, bedbound, incapable of stringing words together. I enclose a short description that I sent to the Chief Inspector of Hospitals recently. This sums up what happened. I'm going to start a campaign to allow carers of people with dementia to have the same rights as parents of children when they're in hospital. We should have been allowed to have stayed with him. I want to write a piece about what happened to him and what happens to thousands of others. To go into his ward in hospital, where all the doctors and nurses were lovely, was like walking into hell, where rows of old people were in states of enormous bewilderment and distress, shouting and crying out, and no one to console them. It breaks my heart to think of it. Let me know if you're interested. Well, of course we were interested, and what resulted was one of the most powerful pieces that has ever been under my desk before it's appeared in the paper. And we were determined to help Nikki and Julia's campaign. We remained so after that email. The rest, as they say, is history. Thank you very much.